People of Reddit, have you known someone who told ridiculous unbelievable lies that they thought they could pass off as true? Yup, in middle school I had a friend who claimed he had a specially made N64 that supported 8 players. We asked if we could all come over and play and he made up excuses. Dup, that was the N128. The tenants at the place where I work lie about things they do all the time and stick by their story even if you have all the evidence in the world to the contrary. Like these really trashy people we had. Their apartment looked like an episode of Hoarders. Were throwing trash out of their window, like it took me several trips with a large trash can to get it all. Of course they say it's not them, it must be the neighbors. Well, A, their neighbors have been out of town for weeks. B, the trash was in a big pile under their window, not their neighbors. C, we found multiple pieces of mail with their name and address on them, their old driver's license and their old library card in the pile of trash. They still denied doing it. A girl in my high school really blew me away with the things she thought we'd believe. My favorite was probably the story about the time a cop cornered her and told her to put her hands against the wall. Lucky for her, it was one of those secret spinning walls like in the movies, so she ran down the secret passage and got away. Bulls, all secret spinning walls go into a room with books and leather chairs and crap. She would have been stuck there until the cop figured out how to open the door. Some kid my little cousin was dating said he was a Marine platoon sergeant whose convoy was once blown up, and he was the only survivor. So he was discharged and given a Purple Heart and has PTSD. He was 16 at the time. A 15-year-old I know said he finished his Navy basic training over the 2-week spring break. He also got a Purple Heart for hurting himself in an explosion. In his Navy training, at the pool, they apparently threw a bomb in the pool, and he hurt himself. And was given an award by the president over the course of 2 weeks. Yes, a woman I work with spouts off 100 pointless lies a day about her life. I can only guess because she thrives on excitement and attention, because all you can do is roll your eyes at the crap she says. Like that she got a $3,000 check from a lawsuit against Red Bull. That her tires are warranted for 150,000 miles because her friend works at the mechanic shop. That her landlord gives her free rent all the time because she loves her so much. Even one time told me she bought $500 worth of weed and that it was rainbow colored from Jamaica. Then the next day said ants got in the bag and ate it all on Feo. No one asks her about this stuff, she just will go up to everyone throughout the day and tell them about it all to make sure you heard her story. If you want to have fun with a chronic liar like that, try to get them to go more into detail and ask leading questions to see how far they will take their hyperbole. Yes, I went to school with a girl who told the most unbelievable and dramatic lies. She told people she was a Victoria's Secret model. She owned a restaurant in Chicago, owned a color iPod mini in every color to match her outfits. LOL. I had to room with her for the DC trip. I had just moved there and didn't know anyone. And we all got in an extremely dramatic fight that ended up with her building a bed out of chairs in the bathroom and calling security. She was something. Yes, I had a friend in high school who was constantly lying about things. There's quite a few examples, but one situation stands out to me the most. She had been talking off and on about her parents getting divorced, which I actually thought may have been true. She said that her dad was already seeing someone else, that they had moved into this fancy subdivision in our area, and that she hated her new stepmom. Now, it all seemed to have happened quickly, but it didn't seem that weird until I spent the night at her house. When I got there, I saw what I knew to be her dad's car in the driveway. I said, "Is that your dad's car?" She said, "Oh wow, he's so bold. Why would he just come here?" So we head inside. I'm feeling like the next few minutes are going to be awkward, so I just head to her room. But I can still hear everything in her living room. Here is the exact scene. My friend, yelling, "What is your deal? You call yourself a dad? You can just show up whenever you please, and then go to your other dad," in a very confused tone. "What are you talking about, Mom?" in a concerned tone. "Honey, what's going on?" My friend, still yelling, "Go to your other family." And Mom, "I can't believe you're allowing this. Leave, Dad, leave." My friend storms down the hallway to her room, where I am. As she reaches the door, she says, "I'm so sorry about that. I'm just so sick of him showing up when he pleases. Meanwhile, we can still hear her parents in the living room. Dad says, "Okay, seriously, what was that?" Mom says, "Just another day with, I guess." I felt so awkward that I didn't even question her about it, lol. The parents' reaction though. I had a friend in middle school who went to a different high school. We still Skyped every so often, and he told me about his good fortune at his new high school. He top of the class, 34 on the ACT, has a girlfriend named Jane. So flash forward to college. I end up in the same class as some girl who went to the same high school as this friend did. I ask her if she knows him. She says he stalked her in high school and wouldn't leave her alone. Her name? Jane. I've since wondered if anything he's told me is true. A person at my school told me that when he used to live in Scotland he had 7 girlfriends at the same time. Another person told me that the area he used to live in was a rough area and that he was shot while living there. Then when asked to see the wound, he said he forgot where he was shot. Maybe he was shot in the groin and was too shy to tell you that his dong has been blown off. A friend of mine got laid after bragging to a girl about being an underwater firefighter. Our other friend backed him up by saying he was an underwater welder and he had his life saved multiple times by said friend. These are both real things though. A guy in high school would tell us all about how he was super mechanically inclined and worked on motorbikes and cars. He was so good that the owner of the shop that he supposedly worked at gave him some old beat up muscle car that was so beat up that no one could fix it. He got it working and restored, but apparently it was too nice to drive to school. His boss took such a liking to him that he let him move into one of the many houses he owned. The house had a pool and he and his friends would take turns jumping into the pool from the roof. Apparently his boss also encouraged him to date his daughter, who promptly moved in with him. After only 2 weeks, he proposed after he took her out in a canoe filled with roses and got her a Tiffany engagement ring, all purchased with his mechanic job. We were 16. This is a repost, but I had, thank God, a co-worker who was the ultimate one-upper, but only for negative things. If you had 1 root canal, she had 6, without Novocaine. If you had morning sickness for 12 weeks, she had it all 40. If you had 6 inches of snow at your house, she had 2 feet. My favorite story, however, is this. She said was a preemie born in 1963 at 24 weeks gestation who weighed less than 2 pounds and was declared dead at birth, but somehow miraculously survived. Now mind you, babies born that early pretty much never survived prior to the 1990s. The technology and knowledge to save these children was just not available pre-1990, and if they did survive were often severely handicapped. Appallingly, she'd pull out this story when anyone at work had a difficult pregnancy, preemie birth or complicated delivery, not to be empathetic, but to one-up them because no matter what they went through, her situation was worse. I was doing some genealogy research at my local city hall, looking at birth certs, marriage certs and death certs, and recalled that it was also the city where she was born. Since I had free run of the records room, because of FOIL laws, you could look at any record, but couldn't get a copy of it, and knew the day and year of her birth. I pulled her birth certificate because I knew she was lying. Sure enough, I found her birth certificate and it showed she was a live birth, born at approximately 36 weeks gestation and weighed 4.5 pounds at birth. Low end of normal, but normal. Such a totally bizarre thing to lie about. I never actually called her out on it because she freaked to find out anyone could pull her birth certificate and she's bat crap crazy, and there's no reasoning with that. But I did feel vindicated to know she was lying through her teeth. The fact she did that to people with complications during pregnancy is what gets me. They're already emotionally worn. They don't need that crap. A girl I went to school with told people that her aunt married a snake. I will never forget that. I also have an ex who would vehemently deny that she was cheating. I could have caught her in the act and she would still try to convince me that she didn't do it. I now refer to her as Shaggy. Was in a gaming clan once where some guy was always trying to one-up people in terms of getting all of the attention in the channel. We would talk about the boxes of Titan XP at his house, or that Nvidia was working on new graphics cards that only he knew about. Then he was a pro game developer that worked on all of this stuff and he had all of these connections in the industry despite living in the middle of West Virginia. Then he tried telling people he had terminal cancer and was going to die in a month. But people knew him viral and, yeah. I left the group since, so it's been half a year since I heard from anyone. But his name alone used to be a running joke for telling BS stories. In SWTOR I was in a guild for a short time, before I left the game, that had someone just like that, including the cancer and the fact his name was something of a joke in the guild. There were a few more lies he told that I can't remember, though I think he claimed to also have top secret government clearance while I was there, including a few new ones. My friend in 3rd grade informed me that she was pregnant, and that it was for this reason that her belly was sticking out. I told her that you have to have sex to get pregnant. She said not always. She also told me that the Backstreet Boys were her cousins. I grilled her on Backstreet Boy trivia, literally just asking if she knew their names, and she couldn't answer any of it. The idea that she thought all the Backstreet Boys were related is hilarious to me. I used to work in a restaurant years ago with a girl that insisted that in order to cure her brother of his fear of cats, the doctor tied him to a fence and threw cats at him until he was cured. She was like 25 and seriously thought that we all believed her. She was entertaining to say the least, and while she drove us crazy with her stories, I do occasionally miss listening to them. My little sister had a friend in elementary school that said she had an underground pool with 100 dolphins living in it. Sister was angry when I called the girl a compulsive liar. My sister didn't draw the line until the friend said she had a cell phone. That, apparently, was unbelievable. Note, this was the mid-late 90s. Kid logic is almost as funny as drunk logic. Know a guy, I'll call him Phil, cause that's his name. He's 5 feet 8 inches, 280 pounds, runs the 1/4 mile in 8.2 seconds, bench presses 610 pounds, with his bare hands, and has bowled over 3,000 perfect games in a row so far. He was in a SEAL Ranger for over 15 years but had to leave the army because he was just too deadly, so he became a ninja until the US called him back to hunt down Noriega. His hands are registered deadly weapons and he will be killed by the FDA if he ever reveals who he really is. He once went to Universal Studios to see the Conan the Barbarian show and almost didn't make it back because they thought he was the perfect Conan. But he had to turn it down because he was going to be the next senior project manager at work. He showed me a framed picture of him as Conan, or rather him as Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan. In the bottom right corner wasn't a page number, it was how much they offered him but without the 12 zeros. Yeah, when I was in high school my sophomore year, this girl wrapped an ace bandage around her chest and colored on it with a red Sharpie and said that she was stabbed by MS-13. I went to school with this weird, cringy guy who fancied my sister. One time he came up to her and said he was attacked by some guy with a knife. He proceeded to unbutton his shirt and show her his scar. This dude had carved a freaking giant X into his own chest. A little while later she decided she was a lesbian and he said he was gay because he thought that's how reverse psychology works. Used to have a friend who was a pathological liar by every sense of the word. Some of his highlights include: heir to a large corporate fortune, grandmother owned a VIP box at a large commercial sports venue, personal friend of Hillary Clinton, graduated with honors from a prestigious university which in reality he attended for 1 semester, high-ranking employee of several political campaigns, Gloria Allred is his personal lawyer, mother was a founding member of the EPA, sister was a backup dancer for Lady Gaga, receives a special monthly benefit from the state for being adopted. 99% sure this was an ED card, which, remember how we're the heir to a large corporate fortune. Mother graduated Harvard Law with, and is a close personal friend of, Justice Kagan. But mind you, this is just the crap I can confirm is false. There's a much longer list of things that I'm just pretty sure are false, as well as things that would be too identifying to share. Your friend sounds like Sue Sylvester from Glee. I had a friend in college like this. Most of them were of these ridiculous, porno movie-esque conquests he'd had since entering college 3 years ago. Threesomes with hot cheerleaders, banging a hot, older professor, public sex. The list just went on like that. It's obvious he took things he liked in P and made up stories involving himself, and he would only tell these stories in public because he wanted random people to hear it. I'm not saying it's true, but a lot of people do have an active sex life. Threesomes and exhibitionistic sex are pretty mainstream today. Met a guy who claimed that at age 14 he worked at medieval times and was one of the knights. He claimed he was the youngest knight in the history of medieval times. And one day when he was walking from his car, wearing a full suit of armor, because they let him take it home, he got struck by lightning. So good. Was in the Navy, so had tons of these. Tons and tons and tons and tons. But the first guy was the one that really stole my heart. We were in boot camp together, and I don't remember his name. Jake? I dunno. He was from Iowa, where his parents were millionaires because in his small town, they were accountants. To all the billionaires in town, they're small. Iowa town had quite a few billionaires. That's how he got money too. He owned a dozen cars, and he had 30 guns in his collection. When he chose to join the Navy as an undesignated enlisted, he got that hookup from his uncle, who was a senator. Former senator. He spent all his summers growing up with him, but he died the previous year, and he already forgot his name. But they were really close. That's why he got in as an undesignated seaman. Also, his another uncle, I think, was an admiral. The nukes wanted him what with his perfect 99 on the ASVAB, and so did the SEALs. He used to train with a bunch of them in Iowa, but his uncle, S, got him the hookup as an undesignated seaman, so that's what he was going to do. Try everything before picking a job, and he already had the hookup from his uncles, including the dead one whose name he can't remember, and the living one whose name he can't remember. So he was going to be stationed in Australia as an undesignated seaman. He had one guy that actually did believe all his crap. Though I will say, most common lie was about ASVAB scores. I don't get it. It's technically private, but everyone knows someone who has access to that info to easily prove or disprove someone's claims. I would say the entire command knew the top and bottom 5 ASVABs at any given time, with them being appropriately shifted as people moved in and out of the command. You can't lie about something that everyone knows. I used to work on cruise ships and there was this stand-up comedian who was an insane liar. He told us all kinds of bulls about how he was once the voice of Donald Duck, but he got fired for doing an impression of Donald having an orgasm that ended up going viral on the internet. He also said he had been on Letterman. He hadn't. Maybe in the audience, but never on the actual show. The best lie he told me was when we were in the crew bar. My hometown had just gotten their NHL team back, so I was proudly rocking a new Winnipeg Jets hat. He proceeds to tell me that he played for the original Winnipeg Jets in the 90s. I'm like, B. I lived and breathed the Jets in the 90s and I never saw your butt on any of our teams. He then goes on to say that he was originally a soccer player in St. Louis and he got drafted by the Blues when the GM was at one of his games. This, he says, was right around the time the Blues team was formed, in the 1980s. The fricking Blues have been in the NHL since 1967. He was dead fricking serious when he told me all of this. I just sat there in shock wondering how the frick he could possibly think I'd believe any of it. Then, a few days later, he was busted in his cabin with a crap ton of C. So I guess I got my answer. To be fair, I did have a friend who had a soundbite on his mini disc player of Donald Duck having an orgasm. There was a girl in middle school that would lie about being rich. The only lies I specifically remember was that she only gave her cat Evian water and she said her dad was a doctor and drove a Porsche. I didn't care either way, but one day after school I paid attention to what car she got into. I can still see her panicked face as she realized I was watching her get into a rink-a-dink Toyota Corolla. Ha, yes. A friend of mine who we'll call Jazandapus, and basically his entire life. I want to mention we're in our late 20s, which makes this even more sad. Now Jazandapus is the biggest compulsive liar I have ever met, both metaphorically and physically. He is a 5'4" fat Vietnamese dude. Literally every story he has told myself or friends is likely and true. He does have a degree of charm but nowhere near what he thinks it is. Literally every week he'd mention sleeping with 2 new girls that he just met. One of our friends asked one of the girls he claimed to have slept with and she wholeheartedly denied it. This guy's entire life is a huge lie he tries to sell to us all. The crazy thing is that he thinks we believe everything he says when in reality it's the opposite. I feel kind of sorry for him because he lives in this world where he thinks his friends see him as this cool guy with a crazy life, but in reality we feel sorry for him, don't believe his lies. My friends and I don't make any effort to hang out with him anymore because every time we meet he guides the conversation into him telling us all the fictitious crap he's up to. A guy at my school told some of us that his father had molested him and is now in prison, and his mother now works 3 jobs to support them alone with no one else in her life. This was the reason why he never had the time to hang out with his friends. We saw him get picked up later that day and clearly heard him say, "Hey dad." Co-worker at Papa John's when I worked there had a black belt in Aikido because he took 2 classes and then beat the teacher, and he was so impressed he awarded the belt. Flew a fighter jet and had PTSD from seeing combat. Wouldn't specify what location. Either had several girlfriends in different locations that he frequently traveled to, or hadn't dated anyone except that one perfect girl who cheated on him with a drug addict. Was an expert hacker. Had gotten kidnapped by the mob in New York that one time. Wouldn't elaborate. There was a bunch more but those are the only ones I really remember. They were all ridiculous, and he'd get really vague or start making up conflicting details when pressed. Keep in mind he was like 19-20 and was very nerd scrawny, the kind of thing that you get from sitting around doing nothing, not from working out or being in the military or WE. A friend back in elementary school tried to convince us that he had a multicolored pet chicken due to it being dropped in paint. This same friend also tried to convince us that he was stuck on a very difficult level in a Mario game and put the Game Boy down for a few moments to return and find that his cat, having walked across the buttons a few times, beat the level for him. Well, I know from experience that a cat won't do any good in Battlefield, especially not when it manages to pull the monitor cable. A guy I went to high school with was always making up stories to get attention. The one that sticks out in my memory is him saying he had died the night before. The ambulance came and revived him, and he went to school in the morning. Not buying your lies, Dale. I know one of these types. The first story he told me was completely ridiculous. He said that he had been raised in Japan. Okay, off to a believable start. He then said he was raised by a Yakuza warrior. Okay, a bit out there, but still believable. He then launched into a story about how he was a perfect shot with a bow and arrow, and regularly hunted in the forests of Japan. Apparently, during one of his hunting excursions, he was attacked by an entire pack of wolves, which he fought off single-handedly at age 9. I knew at this point not to trust anything that came out of the guy's mouth, and since then I've heard numerous stories about how he can use a katana, knows several foreign languages, can use throwing stars, and literally cannot feel pain. Apparently he knows multiple languages as well. And, to top it all off, his cousin runs a very big drug operation, and his cousin also apparently tried to sell it to him. Not feeling pain sounds like an invitation to smack him. I'm pretty certain my ex was a compulsive liar. She would make up these extremely elaborate stories that would have some truths but mostly lies. For instance, she had surgery once, trying to be a halfway decent boyfriend. I was supportive and told her that I would call her when she got out. The red flags started when she told me not to talk to her mom about the surgery. The other red flag was when she had a birthday party right after the surgery. I started to think it was a bit odd. The other major red flag was, one day, she texted me saying she got rape threats from her ex and her best friend. I told her to call the police, since I was away at college, and to screenshot the conversation. She did that and told me that the police would investigate. She then told me that both have disappeared and the police are searching for them by helicopter. It started to get strange at this point. She then called me saying that they found her friend dead and arrested the wrong other person. She got a call from the helicopter, which is strange again. They then found the correct guy who escaped from jail twice. She also told me not to talk to her parents about this, because I wanted to see how I could help. Thankfully, I have a friend whose brother is a police officer and I asked about some of these procedures. He said that none of this seems very factual or according to protocol. Not really my most proud relationship and is also partially why I'm nervous to date again. I did know someone like that. Turned out they had acquired schizophrenia. Not likely all pathological liars have such a disorder, but it sure did wonders for making me realize it's bad to assume before you know everything. I had a friend named William back in school. He was a cool guy, but goddang he always told crazy stories that he somehow thought people would believe. He once told us about the time he shot Slenderman in his backyard and killed him. Or the time he found out his gym teacher was a ghost. He then somehow trapped him in a jar and keeps the teacher in his room. Though he was still a great friend. That he built his own processor out of junk with the help of blueprints he stole from Intel. He'd spout off loads of bollocks, but that was the most ridiculous. I wonder how he created a clean room environment and soldered together millions of tiny transistors. Childhood friend was a compulsive liar. She was many things, including but not limited to 1. The first person to successfully have elective surgery to have gills grafted behind her ears so that she could breathe underwater for up to 20 minutes. Maybe a time limit made it more believable, just made it funnier. 2. Pregnant, many times over. 3. A caretaker for a zebra that had been brought in for the San Diego Zoo. She was just so good with horses that they thought she could help with their one. This area is completely moldy damp redwoods. This one just baffled me more than the others for some inane reason. 4. A drag car racer. 5. Chosen for Lost but turned it down to put school as a priority during high school. 6. Friends with Tony Hawk. Eventually she did actually end up pregnant and she was a drag car racer. Only believe that once I got to sit in the vehicle itself after her dad brought it to school per her request. Maybe she thought we'd believe everything if something was true. She sells those body wrap things now and calls it her own business. She must be so proud. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.